To introduce Bridget from the United States, who takes LDN for Ankylosing Spondylitis, Fibromyalgia, Interstitial Cystitis and Depression. Thank you for joining me, Bridget.
Thank you for having me.
Could you tell us when you first started to notice you had problems?
I was 10 years old. It was 1994, and I started having problems with my left hip. And as I ended up on crutches for 3 years then, and it started spreading to other joints, my other hip and my knees. And by the time I finished high school, I was pretty well half crippled, I'd say.
That must have been very difficult, being a small child and not being able to join in and play with the other children.
Yeah, it is definitely difficult. I was bullied a lot, and but I learned a lot though, so I don't really regret it.
Mm-hmm. So what happened then?
Well, I finally received a diagnosis when I was 21, 11 years later, of ankylosing spondylitis and secondary fibromyalgia that they say was caused by the ankylosing spondylitis. And I've had depression since, well, pretty much since my hip went out when I was a kid, because, you know, that's definitely a trigger for that. And then I believe the interstitial cystitis was in part caused by the medications that I was on earlier in life, the methotrexate and such.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of bad side effects from the methotrexate and Remicade and Enbrel. And so I'm extremely glad to be off of those now.
So what would you say your life was like on a score of 1 to 10 before LDN, and 10 being the best?
Before LDN, I was living at a 3, a 4 or 5 on good days, and those good days were only during warm weather and things like that. I lived around my pain, and I planned my day around my pain, and I didn't sleep much. It was very hard to sleep, and since LDN, I am able to sleep every night, and I don't wake up in tears from the pain anymore, and my quality of life has doubled at least. Now my life is 6 to 10.
Mm-hmm. Well, if we can just find out the whole picture before LDN, and we'll talk about LDN later. Your pain levels, what were they like prior to LDN?
On a good day, I would be at a 6 or a 7, and bad days were 9 or 10. Mm-hmm. And I cried a lot. And the depression, of course, you know, when you're hurting that badly, it's extra hard on the depression front. Mm-hmm. And I was taking a lot of medications for depression and anxiety, as well as for the pain. I had a long-term relationship with Vicodin and Tramadol and Percocet, and I had side effects from those. I think the medications I was on contributed to a car accident I was in, because I was so foggy from the medications. I wasn't thinking clearly.
Yeah.
And I lost jobs. I I kept whittling down my employment until I really just couldn't do anything anymore. I couldn't write anymore. My hands were in too much pain for writing or drawing. And it was, the rheumatologist told me that I was on track to be wheelchair bound by age 30. And that was a really tough prognosis to face. I bought my first cane when I was 19.
Okay, so I mean, you're painting a very, very black picture there. It must have been very, very difficult. How did you hear about LDN?
A friend of my father's, her dad began taking it for Parkinson's, and she was so impressed by it, and she knew that we had autoimmune problems in our family, and she told my father about it. So it took me a couple of years to get to where I was ready to try it. First, I tried prednisone, methotrexate, Remicade, and Enbrel, indomethacin, large quantities of steroids and anti-inflammatories. And when I had been on a triple dose of immunosuppressants at the same time and ended up sicker from the side effects than from the ailments I was taking them for, I decided it was time to try something different. So I asked my doctor if he would prescribe LDN for me, and he said no, and I tried my general practitioner and my rheumatologist, and I was turned down, and it didn't look like I was going to be able to get it. But then we called the compounding pharmacy and asked them which doctors in the area prescribed it. So I made an appointment with the local doctor who did prescribe it, and paid cash out of pocket for that. I paid $300 for that first appointment, and he's an osteopath, a DO, and he said, sure, let's give it a try. And I paid out of pocket for it, got off of the opiates I was taking and the immunosuppressants I was taking. And I was scared to get off of the opiates, of course. I think everyone is when they face that. But I got through that and got through the withdrawals. And when I started taking LDN, the results were noticeable within a week. Other people were noticing how much better I was moving and how much happier I looked, and started mentioning it to me and saying, wow, you look really good. What have you done differently? What's changed? Did you fall in love? And within 2 weeks, I wasn't using my walker or my cane anymore. And I have to say that for me, the results were nothing short of fantastic.
And what are your pain levels like now?
My pain levels now are cut in half, at least. On a good day, I'm a 2 or a 3, and I haven't had pain above, probably like a 7 in years. And my average every day, I would say, is 3 to 4. And even when I overdo it, and I send myself into a flare from doing too much. Let's say I go horseback riding, or I get carried away in the garden and really wear myself out. The sort of thing that before LDN would be an unbearable flare that lasted for weeks and put me in a wheelchair now is maybe hours or maybe a couple of days on my cane or on crutches. And my wheelchair is actually just collecting dust right now. I haven't used it in years.
Oh, it's amazing.
And so one of the big improvements that I've seen is the duration and the intensity of the flares when I overdo it, or when weather moves in, or the things that would set me off. The flares are just, by comparison, tiny and extremely short-lived.
Mm-hmm.
And I heal so much faster now.
So what would you rate your quality of life like now on the score of 1 to 10, 10 being the best?
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not an Olympian or anything. I'm not out there working a 40-hour week and then coming home to clean the house. Like, I wish I could, but my quality of life is 7 at least. I can play with my daughter. I can go horseback riding every so often. I can garden, and I don't have to stay in bed with the heating pad all winter, and I get a good night's sleep every night, and that alone by itself is a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
And my depression is definitely improved. The number of medications I take has been cut in half, and I got to dance with my husband at our wedding.
Aww.
And I never thought I would be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we have danced several times since then.
Good. And you were telling me about the gynecological problems and having your daughter.
Yes, when we got pregnant in 2008, I decided I wanted to stay on the LDN no matter what. And since I had had miscarriages before, it was deemed a high-risk pregnancy, and so I was seeing a perinatalogist, and he asked me all about LDN, and he researched it, and he said if I wanted to stay on it, that was cool, and he was very interested in watching what would happen. And the pregnancy went extremely well. It was the first time I've been able to carry to term. And the perinatalogist told me that he thinks LDN is the reason my daughter is alive, that's why she wasn't a miscarriage like the others. And she was born happy and healthy, full term. Everything went great. Natural birth, which I didn't think I could do with my sacroiliac half fused. I was terrified that it was all going to go wrong, but it went really well. And I nursed her for almost a year, and the entire time she was nursing, she was also reaping the benefits of the LDN, and she didn't get so much as a sniffle. The entire time, she was the healthiest, happiest baby around. And especially since she was born in the fall and everyone gives you the whole panic about respiratory infections with a newborn, and everyone was really impressed by her immune system and how well we did.
Well, that's truly an amazing, remarkable story. Thank you very much for sharing it with us.
Thank you. I just can't say enough good stuff about LDN. I really can't. I tease my husband that if it came down to LDN or him, that he would really have a run for his money. I consider it to be I'm pretty much married to LDN. I'm never going off of it ever. If I had no insurance and if I had to take only one medication, that is what I would pick. I would pick LDN hands down, no matter what, because I don't have any side effects from it. The only thing I ever noticed was I don't drink alcohol after taking my LDN at night because it gets me super drunk. So that's really the only side effect type thing I've had in, 2007, almost 7 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So I love it, and I'm never going back, ever. And I will crusade for it for the rest of my life.
Oh, thank you, Bridget. To introduce